the rest of the world is finally recognizing the State of Palestine, including the UK, it took a genocide for that to happen. Many people think the two-state solution is a Palestinian demand. May I correct this? The two-state solution was a Palestinian concession. Wherever I go in the West, not just in the UK, Israel needs security. Okay, and we don't need security? Why don't you say Palestine needs security? And who provides us with security? And how can we protect our people? We will not establish a state as a function of what Israel wants. We will establish a state as a function of what the Palestinian people want and deserve. I want to see our children in playgrounds, in schools. The honor of my life really is to represent the Palestinian people.
Hello and welcome to Ways to Change the World. I'm Krishnan Guru-Murthy, and this is the podcast in which we talk to extraordinary people about the big ideas in their lives and the events that have helped shape them. My guest today was born in a refugee camp in Gaza and has since become one of the most prominent Palestinian voices on the world stage, an academic, strategist, advisor to presidents, and a diplomat. In 2017, Husam Zomlot was appointed envoy to the United States until the Trump administration shut down the PLO mission in Washington. The following year, he became head of the Palestinian Mission in London, a role that has now been elevated to ambassador after the UK's formal recognition of the State of Palestine. He has been a leading voice for Gaza throughout the recent conflicts, whilst also enduring devastating personal loss with members of his own family killed in the violence. Husam Zomlot, welcome to the podcast. You've spent your whole life really trying to change the world, so give me the vision of how you want to change it.
By focusing on the true owners of this world, the people, by focusing on the human aspect, too much focus has been put on non-human things, all the way now to the AI. By going back to the very idea of universal values, by making sure that we complement one another rather than substitute one another. You know, I did my studies here in London in the 90s, in the late 90s, and things were heading in the right direction. The UN and the rules we created after the horrors of the Second World War was rather taking shape, intervening in many places, resolving conflicts. Trade was seen to be a way of friendship between nations, not a tool of war and sanctions and punishment and what have you. The world has become then, or was becoming, if you remember, your generation and mine, global village. People were able to travel, people were able to interact, and then something hit this globe by the beginning of this century, 2001, and all that happened since then. And we have been on a decline. And today, a quarter of a century later, in 2025, I'm really concerned. I'm concerned that we are losing that very principle of universal values, that we are all equal under the law, that what brings us together is much bigger than what divides us. And I see the disintegration of the very idea of a global system, international law, the holding of the idea that only the powerful what matters, the undermining of the very principles and bases we want to see this globe perform. And Palestine has been in the core of all this. And regrettably, Israel has literally made mockery of all that we have been building over the last 70 years. And the result is devastating, and it will be far-reaching than just Palestine. And this is a moment when we have to regain that world that we want to see and make sure that we inherit something for our children different than what we are living right now.
But you were born into fundamentally unequal circumstances. Your family had been moved by the creation of Israel. So what was your sense of what equal rights were?
The very sense is the sanctity of human life. That's the bare base of everything. That human life should never be disposable. That there is no such a thing as, different colors of blood. We are all the children of one God. There's no one is chosen. We are all chosen, all of us. And we have the same rights. And that supremacy, racism, bigotry is the biggest enemy of the human race. And not just in Palestine and Israel, it's throughout history. Look when it takes shape, this superior ideas that we are a superior race. Look at the consequences of the Second World War. Look at the horrors of the Nazi regime. Look at the most heinous crime in modern history, the Holocaust. And 6 million Jews were murdered because of that. And as a child, I was really growing up just feeling that why I was born in a very exceptional, why the tent and why the UN flag and what's with all this food being distributed to us and why my school was different than what I see elsewhere and many questions. And all these questions always brought me back to the very idea that we have to fight for ourselves and others. It's the same fight. It's the same cause. Whether in Rafah, where I was born, or in Latin America, or Africa, or in Asia, or anywhere. It's the same fight. So the short answer to your question, it is the sanctity of human lives and rights.
Do you feel now life in Gaza is being treated as disposable?
I don't feel. I know, I see, I follow, I call my family. I still have family. Whoever left of my family, I've lost tens of them. We even lost count now.
You've lost count?
No, the last time we counted from my extended family was 106. And my family is small by size, by numbers. In proportionate term, that's a huge number. But I think the number is much bigger. We still don't know how many of my own extended family are still buried under their homes.
What happens when you get that news via the family of another loss?
Two things. First, I cry. I feel very sad. And second, I feel a sense of responsibility. We have failed them. I have failed them. The world has failed them. I feel a sense of like, how could we let this happen? Really, that's what I feel. Especially most of those who were killed were young and children, and they should be protected by us. And if I call myself an ambassador representing their occupied state, I should have been able to do something about it. But I also think about the world. I mean, while the world now has finally, the rest of the world is finally recognizing the State of Palestine, including the UK, it took a genocide for that to happen. And still, the world failed to stop the genocide, and let alone prevent the genocide to start with. So as a Palestinian, a boy from a refugee camp, my family in Gaza being killed and murdered, all the way to being my people's ambassador to the US and now to the UK, being part of this international diplomacy and system, believing that in the very end we have to resolve our issues collectively, multilaterally. I have many questions now. I have really many questions. And it really attacks the very fundamental belief in me that brought me to the LSE here, the London School of Economics, and it brought me from where? The first job I had, I was educated as an undergraduate in Palestine, in Birzeit University. And when I graduated, economics, I have studied economics, taught economics, research economics all of my life. So I'm an intruder into politics, for your information. But the moment I graduated from Birzeit University, the one place I wanted to join was not governments or even, private sector. It was the UN. So I was a UN official for 5 years. Because I always believed, since I was a child, maybe because of that story I just told you, I was fed by the UN, educated by the UN, and I always saw the UN. You know what? I'll tell you a small little child story. I always thought the UN, when I was 5, 6, 7 years old, I always thought the UN flag, the blue flag, was my flag. My national flag, because it was the only flag flying over the houses, flying over the school, the clinics, because it was UNRWA schools, UN schools. Even the cars that used to come to the 4x4, UN cars, would have the flag. And as a child, I even thought the drivers and the passengers of these cars are my army, you see. So the moment I graduated and I was to offer myself to the workplace, to the market, the only thing I could think of is to join that army, is to join that army of the globe, that army of the world that come to enforce rules equally on all of us, that will save all of us. So for me, the consequences of what is happening in Gaza, the genocide, the mass murder, the mass destruction, and the mass starvation, the consequences on my set of beliefs is absolutely devastatingly massive. And I am trying my best to hold the belief to keep that light in my heart, that no, in the very end, we have to continue fighting for that system to get hold, for the very idea of a global, just, fair system to continue. The problem, I tell myself from time to time, I look at the mirror, the problem, Husam, is not in the law. The law is good. It's not even in the institutions of the law, as in the ICC and the ICJ. Look at them. They are being sanctioned now. The problem is in the few powerful countries who want to be selective when it comes to the application of the law, who wants to put Israel above every rule, above every piece of law, who wants to keep the immunity for Israel. And then you think, no, you keep fighting those few powerful individuals who are literally destroying everything we want to build as a community of nations.
Do you believe the UN is still a functioning institution? I mean, when you look at the General Assembly and you look at this parade of speeches and you see how Trump delivers his message to the world, is it still a viable way to solve problems?
We don't have a better alternative. And it was effective, and it's still effective. I mean, I just described to you my experience with UNRWA. And UNRWA is a UN organization that was established to take care of Palestinian refugees until our right to be, our issue to be resolved, our right of return to be fulfilled. Now, UNRWA is the most extensive, most effective way of distributing assistance, food, education, medical services, what have you, treatment. Most effective, by the way. And that's exactly why Israel has attacked UNRWA. So the issue is not how much the UN is effective. And if there were some shortcomings, and I'm sure there are in this organization or that, we can fix it. The issue is in the few who see in the UN as their enemy.
You see, I can imagine Israelis listening to your answer and your story about your childhood and saying, well, how appropriate that he thought the UN was his flag because the UN is on their side. You know, they believe the UN is biased. They believe the UN is pro-Palestinian.
No, because
they say more than that. They say pro-terror.
Come on. A child is a child.
Yeah.
A child is a child. He sees a flag. But that's a good story about one of us. Israel was established by the UN. The birth certificate of Israel came from the UN. The UN has helped Israel so much throughout its journey. But the moment the UN stood against Israeli unlawful exercise, unlawful policies, the genocide, until UNRWA was able to distribute food, which is exactly what Israel doesn't want. Israel wants to use starvation as a method of war, period. Israel wants to use starvation as a way of pushing people out of Gaza. So the moment the UN became in the way of the Israeli design, of the Israeli campaign for erasure, annihilation, and extermination, the UN had to go. The UN is the bad guy. Okay, I was 5-6 years old, I told you. A couple of years later, I knew that this is my flag, the Palestine flag, the 4 colors, and I was very proud of it. But my flag and the blue flag should be always next to each other, because the whole idea of Palestine is to be part of the community of nations. The whole idea is that you are a bridge between East and West. The whole idea is that you are so proud of being part of this international community, and you would adhere to the provisions and the rules of the international community. Now, a moment a member of that international system is not adhering, we need to make them comply and adhere to this. So the argument is, oh, he thought that the UN, this is ridiculous. The UN is for everybody, because as much as I was a refugee in Rafah, the UN was providing for refugees in Syria, for Syrian refugees. They were providing in Latin America, in Africa, everywhere. So all these children would have felt they have a big brother in the UN, and they have given these children a future. And this is exactly what every other children anywhere in the world should be receiving. And should Israelis at one point in time would need international help, they should be granted.
You said it has taken a genocide, as defined by the UN Commission recently, to get Britain, France, and all these other nations to recognize the State of Palestine. What does that tell you, if that's true, about the way the Western world sees Palestinian lives?
Yeah, we've spoken about this. I have been talking about it. There was a great deal of dehumanization of the Palestinian people, a great deal. That our lives are literally disposable. That we are somehow children of a lesser God. And that's why always the issue of condemnation gets me a bit, I challenge all this, not because
Condemnation of Hamas.
of targeting Israeli civilians. And let me say this, we condemn the targeting of civilians from all sides. But the problem with the West is always with the all sides. They don't accept us to say from all sides. They want us to specify the killing of Israeli civilians, when in fact Palestinian civilians have been killed all along, before the 7th of October, after the 7th of October, and the conversation doesn't pick up. And that tells you all you need to know. And that's why since the 7th of October, and before the 7th of October, I've been saying, the 6th of October, the UN came up with a report, and international organizations, that was the deadliest year for the Palestinian children in the West Bank, not in Gaza even. Why didn't you bring me here? Why didn't you bring an Israeli official? Listen, I go all over the UK now and other countries, and I sit on, in conversations like this. Lastly was Chatham House, and many other, think tanks, media, what have you. We always get to ask, do you condemn? Always the Palestinians. And the Israelis would come just after us. Actually, a few days after I was interviewed by the chair of the director of the CEO of Chatham House, the Israeli president was sitting on the same seat. The question, do you condemn the murder of more than 65,000 innocent Palestinians, including 20,000 children, was never asked. Was never asked, still is never asked. That tells you the story of how much there is a devaluing of Palestinian life. Why? I don't understand why.
So what's changed?
Is it why? Why do you think? What changes the why? Is it religious reasons? No. Palestine is the birthplace of Christianity. I mean, Jesus was born in Palestine, Bethlehem, the Church of Nativity, the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. So the heritage for Palestine, and Palestine is made of Palestinian Christians and Muslims. We are the original Christians, and Palestine is sacred to all religions, including, of course, to Islam, as Prophet Muhammad is believed to have ascended by Muslims, of course, to heavens. So it's very sacred, Al-Aqsa Mosque. And we should take pride in that. I mean, it's a source of pride. And Palestine, before the establishment of Israel, was really, go back to history, was the example of tolerance, of coexistence, of one nation. That's why you will never know, you're speaking to me, you will never know as a Palestinian who's a Muslim and who's Christian. The two ambassadors before me were Christians. The one before me immediately was Armenian. They only came to Palestine 100 years ago. They took refuge in Palestine. We opened our arms completely to the Armenian community to protect them. And the same thing happened after the Holocaust and the atrocities that were committed. We open our homes and our hearts because the Palestinian people are so proud of them receiving everybody. Why I'm saying this? One of them, of the Armenians, became our ambassador to the UK, and our foreign minister now is one of them. So this is the Palestine I'm talking about. And this is the kind of world. So we are not just preaching. This is who we are, and this is how we do it, and this is how we are proud. She's Palestinian, our foreign minister. Our ambassador here, the Armenian, was a proud representative of the people of Palestine. And the one before him, Afif Safi, was Catholic here in London, was Catholic. So we come from a background and a society that what we care about is our humanity, not our faith, not our color, not our height. This is the heart of the matter that should apply everywhere. I don't, my ears get painful when I hear all this dirty talk about, that human beings are a threat. Palestinian refugees are a threat. No, they're not a threat. Wherever they go, they are a source of pride. I did that ceremony a couple of days ago to raise the Palestinian flag in commemoration, in marking the UK historic recognition of the State of Palestine. And I said that, among them, in that ceremony, there were many Palestinians coming to share that moment with us. And I told them, look around you. You will see top doctors, top, the highest consultants in the NHS. The last I counted, just one count, 550 Palestinian highest consultants in the NHS. Look at you will see innovators and entrepreneurs and what have you. I'm saying this, Krishnan, just to say, the UK, Europe, the West must see us for our humanity and what we can contribute rather than what Israel has been feeding for 77 years now, maybe more, that we are only a threat. No, we were the biggest opportunity in the region, and we will be the biggest opportunity in the region. So yes, I have encountered so much racism. And let me stress this again. There is a lot of anti-Palestinian racism, anti-Palestinian bias, anti-Palestinian bigotry everywhere I went, everywhere. There is always assumptions, there is always perception, there is always an idea in the heads of anybody that I would counter. I would have to be on the defense all the time. I would have to prove myself and ourselves, and I would have always to explain myself.
And the assumption is what?
As a human, to explain myself as a human. When I come from a place that exports humanity.
What do you feel people assume about you?
Always look at this. Look at this. Israel is established via a British declaration, the Balfour Declaration, which was completely and utterly illegal, immoral in every sense, and a historic injustice that was committed against our people, because they gave away our land, our land, without any consultation, without any legitimacy. Britain did not have any legitimacy to give away a land of a people without any consultation. And then they took over Palestine, Britain ruled Palestine from 1919 to 1948, and they were supposed to, as per their contract, their agreement with the League of Nations at the time, supposed to oversee our independence. What they oversaw was our Nakba, the ethnic cleansing of 2/3 of the Palestinian people. So for me to see the British Prime Minister, after all these years, to stand and say, we recognize the State of Palestine, we recognize the inalienable right of the Palestinian people to self-determination, that's a historic moment. Not only for us, not only for the Palestinian people. I said, and I say it again, Palestine existed long before the Balfour Declaration. Palestine will always exist, and Palestine will always be there. It's about Britain. It's about righting the wrongs and beginning a new chapter and moving in the very right direction. And I said, and I say it again, recognition is only a step, one step. It's not a destination on which we need to build so many other steps. So actually we uproot the root cause of all this, which is the colonial occupation, the besiegement, the oppression, the apartheid regime that is established, and now genocide.
Right. So if it is only a step, you believe this should be the step towards still the two-state solution?
The first and foremost thing that we need to do right now is to end the genocide. Our people are being literally murdered en masse as we speak. And you know what hurts me the most? At the beginning of the genocide, everybody was denying it. Now the UN Commission comes out. Before it was the ICJ. And every time I say to a BBC anchor or anybody, any media here, genocide, if I utter the word genocide, they will have to say, but Israel refused. Yes. Your role as a media, as an anchor, as a journalist, not to say what Israel says. Your role is to tell me what you see. And Israel has preventing you, the entire international media, from accessing Gaza until now, 2 years. And you haven't really pushed back enough. Not you. I'm not talking about you. I'm talking... And you, but I'm talking about the Western mainstream media.
Although my role, I have to say, you said the ICJ. The ICJ didn't say it's a genocide. It said there's a case for genocide.
But that's what a court does.
Yeah.
To admit Israel for a case of genocide, they would say plausible, of course. But then you will hear the ruling later, and it will be...
The ruling will come at some point.
Of course, it will come.
So in terms of ending the genocide, in your terms, what is your route? What is the next step?
First thing and foremost, of course, there are diplomatic efforts as we speak. There is Egypt, Qatar, and with it the US for a ceasefire. There are many proposals, and every time we are very close, Netanyahu does something. Last time he attacked Iran. A couple of weeks ago, he attacked Qatar, as you saw. By the way, the attack against Qatar and against the sovereignty of Qatar, which was asked by the international community to play the role of a mediator. Of course, illegal, criminal, all that. But the main idea of it for Netanyahu was to bomb the ceasefire proposal. That's the whole idea. He doesn't want a ceasefire. So I'm saying this to tell you, we need to push back in the diplomatic arena. But there are other arenas we need to make sure it happens. So actually, Netanyahu finally complies.
I mean, the diplomatic arena clearly isn't going to work without America, is it?
Yes. Well, there was a meeting between President Trump and many regional leaders only a couple of days ago at the fringe of the UN, the General Assembly, ONGA, and it seems everybody's talking positively that President Trump wants to offer a grand deal to end the war on Gaza, to end the genocide, and to move forward into a direction of peace. I'm hoping that. But there are answering your question, we must make sure that while the diplomatic political track is going, there is the legal track. And the legal track requires the following. Number one is accountability. We must see war criminals behind bars. As I was walking into the studio, I saw that Slovenia announced that Netanyahu is now persona non grata, and he will have a travel ban to Slovenia. Well, that's following the ICC arrest warrant against Netanyahu. Accountability is very important, my friend, because without accountability, not only you'll never give justice to the victims, but you will never deter the next war criminals. You will be setting duck for the next genocide, and not just against Palestinians, but against anybody, and not just against our children, but maybe against your children. So we need to make sure that accountability is upheld. This is the most significant part. Anybody who committed war crimes, anybody, any entity, all must be held accountable.
But it's about sequencing, though, isn't it? Because what you may find, if you get to a ceasefire, your demand for accountability is going to butt up against the reality of a political settlement and the creation of some sort of Palestinian entity, and there may be a demand for reconciliation, which denies you accountability.
Well, we are not the first nation to have gone through this most horrible, painful oppression and murder and targeting. South Africans and the apartheid regime, many others, without going through the list. The list is unfortunately long. But you always have to, it's not either or. You will have to have a political resolution, but you will have to have justice. Justice has to be in the middle of any peacemaking. If justice is not the premise of it, it will not sustain. And look at us. We've tried at peace, many shots. It failed because justice was not in the center of it.
Can you see Israel giving Netanyahu up to an international court?
It must. Because if we want to save not only Palestinian children, but save our international system. It was the ICC that issued the arrest warrant, not me, and not us. And the ICC has the world judges. This is the world court. Once it does, and let him defend himself. What are you talking about? Let him go and say, I'm innocent, I didn't do anything, and prove it. The whole idea is that if you really want to deter next criminals, next war criminals, deter next people who think that mass murdering people, mass destroying their homes, I mean, Gaza's gone.
Do you think the world wants to?
How do you do
There's a big assumption there, isn't it?
Okay. How do you do this? There are two ways to do this. Either we build our own military capability to defend ourselves, and the never again for us, that moment is by building the strongest army in the region, and dare anybody touch our children. Or we revert to multilateralism and international judicial system and make sure it's the power of the globe that brings about accountability and deterrence. Which one you prefer? Which one? I prefer the second. I don't think we should build big armies. I think the Middle East has to be a nuclear-free zone completely, starting with Israel. I think the Middle East should focus on economic integration and on giving our people a better opportunities. So we shouldn't go into a military race. So the only alternative to the issue of accountability and justice is international system.
I mean, as you know, Israel says...
But that's number one of the items. Still, there are others.
Yeah, okay, we'll come back to it. But, you know, the Israelis who support Netanyahu, and even many in the opposition who oppose a Palestinian state, as many of them do, say the reason you cannot have a Palestinian state, as you say, is because you cannot have a country that could attack us. You cannot have a country that could have an army, that could have weapons, that could have the ability to go to war with Israel. How are you going to overcome that basic problem? Not you, but how will you and Israel?
The argument is, if the argument was genuine, I'm happy to discuss it. But the argument by Israel is a pretext, like many other pretexts. They just don't want to see a Palestinian state. And Netanyahu is on the record publicly saying it every other day, I will never allow for a Palestinian state. Now, for security, think with me. Number one, who needs security most? We or the occupier? The occupied or the occupier? I tell you, I look at you right in your eyes and I tell you it's the occupied, it's the colonized, it's the besieged, it's the genocided that needs security most. And throughout our history, and particularly in the last century, and since the Israel was established, our security has been impeached. We have been treated as I said many times, as just disposable, and not just in terms of murder. You know how many thousands of Palestinians rounded in Israeli jail without charge, without trial? We're just nothing. They just come to our homes in the middle of the night, round us, and they throw us in their jails, and we can rotten for years and years without any legal due process. Now, so number one, we need security. And wherever I go in the West, not just in the UK, Israel needs security. Okay, and we don't need security? Why don't you say Palestine needs security? And who provides us with security? And how can we protect our people? What is the role of the state? What is the role of the UK as a state? What's the number one role for any state? The protection of its people. That's number one. How do I protect our people? So we have to think of our security. We will not establish a state as a function of what Israel wants. We will establish a state as a function of what the Palestinian people want and deserve. It's their right. That's the social contract between the people and the state. That's number one. Number two, do you really think, Krishnan, that security can ever be an outcome of bombing? Like you bomb your way to security? Well, security is an outcome of peace, an outcome of a political resolution, an outcome of fulfillment of people's rights, an outcome of acknowledgement of the wrongs of the past, an outcome of having a shared future. If we really believe that we could have neighborly future and we can look at the best out of us, and look, think with me, Israel is a very high-tech society, very well linked to the US and the West with all the free trade arrangements and what have you, and the Silicon Valley, the whole, and the economy is very strong. But also we have the most educated and young population, very inspiring, and wherever they go, they build societies up in the Gulf and everywhere. Can you imagine if we let that be the main source of security will disappear. Security will disappear. It's a pretext. Security is an outcome of fulfilling people's rights. Security for Israel is a pretext to undermine and deny people's right.
When you look at the map, though, is it possible? Is it viable as a single entity? Israel is clearly, openly now doing everything it can to make it impossible. It is building this new E1 settlement. It has got security control over different parts of the West Bank. A lot of people think the West Bank is actually a single entity over which Palestinians have control. Of course it isn't. How, when you look at the map, can you see that as a functioning, viable state that takes in the West Bank and Gaza with one government?
Very, very simple. I mean, Palestine has to be like any other state. Our land, as per the most historic painful concession we made, is the 1967 areas. And I repeat, the most painful, because many people think the two-state solution is a Palestinian demand. May I correct this in your program, in your podcast? The two-state solution was a Palestinian concession. Since this whole thing started, the Palestinian National Agency, the PLO, the political program we offered as a people that have been ethnically cleansed is a one democratic state. That's the PLO program up until 1988. It's one state in the historic land of Palestine, and we will accommodate everybody, because look at our history. We were saying we would accommodate you regardless of your religion, regardless of your color. You will be Palestinian, and we will build that state together. And that idea was a non-starter, because Israel want to be, Jewish and democratic between 100 parentheses.
And to exist, to continue to exist.
Yeah, but they could exist, but they want to exist on their own, exclusive. And they say it. I mean, this is in the public record. That's their ideology, and they have even legislated in the Knesset only recently that there will only be one people for the right of self-determination from the river to the sea. They said it's a law in the Knesset. That's only the Jewish people. And people talk about some Palestinian political groups, and they never talk about some Israeli political groups. I mean, what they have in their manifestos is just unbelievable, including Likud itself.
But come back to the practicalities of how you administer a state that is spread across two different parts of another state, Israel.
Well, fine. The West Bank is one territorial entity. Israel is putting all the roadblocks. Israel is inserting all the illegal colonial settlements. All this is illegal. It's war crimes under international law, and all this must be dismantled. So we're not talking about a state with the current status quo and situation. We're talking about a state once the occupation has ended, and we want to see a political process that backrolls occupation and colonization rather than advance it as happened during Oslo. You mentioned Oslo. Oslo was meant to be 5 years, and then after that there will be a state because the occupation will be withdrawing. And that's why we have Area A, B, and C, because the first withdrawal was A, followed by B, and followed by C. But we discovered how disingenuous Israel was, because they took A and B as a license to expand their settlements while we were in the middle of making a serious attempt at peace, and they wanted to undermine it. Look, go back to Israel's history. Under serious international pressure, under serious pressure in general, Israel would dismantle all these illegal settlements. They did that in Sinai, in Egypt. They did that in southern Lebanon. They did that in Gaza. So it's not an impossibility. It could happen once we garner sufficient will and sufficient pressure to actually make them go in that direction. As for Gaza, Gaza is a beloved, most integral part of the State of Palestine. How do you connect Gaza to the West Bank? There are many ideas of doing that. If there is such a will and such a quest to go in a different direction, to establish peace in the region, and I believe the majority of the people of the world want that, including the Palestinians and many Israelis. I've seen 500,000 of them in the streets wanting a ceasefire, protesting the Netanyahu government. If we can build that momentum, and the conference that happened in New York, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia with France, and bringing all these people around together, the speech that was made by our president to the UN only recently, all that momentum, the wave of recognitions, including the UK, the country of the Balfour Declaration, and all that history, we can move forward. We cannot, let's not allow genocide to be the final word. Let's not allow genocide to be the final word. I think the final word should be peace. The final word should be reconciliation, and the final word should be that both Israel and Palestine is part of an international community, of a global system that treat all equally.
Do you worry, though, that you might be out of touch with the younger generation of Palestinians who have now lived through 2 years of this killing and who are very skeptical about a two-state solution, and who are actually going back to the idea that you said the PLO wanted originally, of one state, and they're not interested in this idea of compromise?
Can you blame them? I cannot blame them. People going through genocide and ethnic cleansing in the West Bank. I mean, I was in the West Bank very recently. I spent a month there, and what I saw there was just heart-wrenching. I was not, even I, who was connected all the time, going and coming, I wasn't prepared for what I saw. I mean, while rightly so the attention is on Gaza, Israel is using the time to finish its real job, which is in the West Bank. So, having said that, I understand what our younger generation are going through. I really do. But I want them to also understand what the previous generations, not just my generation, but the many generations before us, have gone through to arrive at a moment where we compromise, we give that painful concession, as I started by saying, for the sake of peace and for the sake of our future and the children of our children and the children of the region and the world. This is not just about our children. And the best way, the leaders of the time, Yasser Arafat, the founder of the movement, of the Palestinian National Movement, the father of the nation, found was to ally ourselves with international legitimacy, international consensus. We go back to the beginning of this conversation, the significance of internationalism, universalism in this whole equation. And whether we like it or not, the international, and many in the Palestinian side saw that as unjust or unjust. But the international community has come to a consensus that the solution is two states on the 67 borders. So we, as a Palestinian, at the time, as a Palestinian movement, saw in that, okay, let's accept this proposal, so at least we save what's left of our people and we embrace the future. So I will tell them to study carefully the past, to see what the previous generations have gone through and why they arrived at this moment. And I will tell them that in the end, what matters is not how big or small the compromise will be. In the very end, what matters is how do we make sure that our children are protected and they have a future they deserve. Krishnan, I want to see our children in playgrounds, in schools, and I want to see them in universities and leading your banks and leading your international organizations. That's what we want them to see.
And what do you do about your extremists? There are extremists in every culture, including in the Palestinian one, and they have arguably undermined the peace process for generations. What do you believe that they are persuadable, or do they have to be defeated?
Depends what you mean by extremist, but I think the biggest weapon against the most lethal weapon.
I mean, the people who still want
the most lethal. You mean the people who want Israel to go? That's what.
Yeah, and who believe in violence.
So you believe also, like 3/4 of the Israeli political class believe that Palestine doesn't exist. Now this is the issue. The issue is that always when it comes to Palestinians, you started by asking me, extremism is a Palestinian thing, violence is a Palestinian thing.
No. I said everyone has.
Violence.
All of these societies have, and Israel definitely does.
Terrorism is a Palestinian thing.
No.
When in fact all these things, terrorism, violence, incitement is Israeli thing par excellence. Are you hearing what the Israeli
I literally said everybody has extremists, including Israel, but so does Palestine. Okay. So the question is, what do you do with your extremists who believe in violence?
I'll tell you, and take my answer for a face value. The biggest, most lethal weapon against extremists everywhere is one word, hope. Hope. Extremism thrives on desperation, thrives on depression, thrives on the feeling that nothing is possible. So hope is the antidote of all what you're seeing now. And that's why we must give our people hope now, before it's too late. And not just our people, all people. People are so depressed, my friend, everywhere. People feel that this is dark, this is impossible, that we are just going to be killed anyway. And then when you get to, and we are going to be killed alone. And even when we are killed, nobody will bury us. You know, the biggest fear for our people in Gaza, and I'm on the phone almost every day, the biggest fear is not that their children will be killed. The biggest fear of many fathers I spoke to and mothers is that they will not be able to bury their own children. They only wish, should their children be killed, they can still bury them. And by the way, there are many children who are still unburied. So in such situation and in such thinking, how do you give them? How do you light up a candle in the middle of this darkest of darkness? And the only answer to that is a horizon to a different future and a fight against the fanatics in the Israeli government. And who can light this candle? Who can now light this candle? Who is the big brother? You think you can wait for a candle like this to be lit in Israel? You think there will be an Israeli leader who come out grand and say enough is enough, we have done enough atrocities against the Palestinian people. They have, like we do, the right to self-determination. They have, like we do, the right to equality. And they have the right, like us, to a state of their own. I don't see this happening very soon because of the indoctrination, because of the racism, because of the idea that they are the eternal victim and the only victim.
So who will light the candle?
The eternal victim and the only victim, because the idea that they are the chosen people, and because they are superior to everybody, they can do as they wish and they will never, ever be held accountable. They are completely immune. And of course, they think they can do whatever. Can you imagine? They just go and bomb Qatar, this closest ally of the US. I mean, that's the culture that is being created that we have to change.
So where does the hope come from?
The hope has got to come from the humanity now. The humanity, our humanity as a human race and family. And I just want to tell you, it is coming. It's coming. And it's literally irradiating everywhere. And it's reaching Gaza, it's reaching Jenin and Tulkarem and Al-Khalid and Al-Quds, Jerusalem, and it's reaching our people in the refugee camps and the diaspora. That light, that hope is coming from the people of the world. Do not underestimate when our people see the millions in London and the UK in general. They see them every week, every month. Do not underestimate the power of the people and the expansion of this largest protest movement in the history of this country, of the UK and worldwide. Do not underestimate what our people are following, what is happening in Spain, what is happening in France, what is happening in Italy as we speak in the last few days, what is happening everywhere in the world. Do not underestimate when our people see that the people of the world are changing, not only their government. You asked me how did the recognition came about. It's the British people. It's the public opinion that pressured the parliament, and the parliament pressured the cabinet, and the cabinet delivered in the very end. And why did the people change? Because of the Palestinian people. The Palestinian people communicated that we are being killed, we are being murdered, we are being destroyed. It's a genocide. And the people realized that this is something they have to. And then it became global Palestine. I'll tell you, today, this isn't about a solidarity movement with Palestine. This is a global Palestine, meaning the people of the world, particularly in the UK, and I'll end by why I say the UK is very relevant here, why Britain is very relevant. But particularly here, believe now, this is not just our fight. They really, truly, and I meet thousands of them, literally. And I am in the streets, as you may follow, and I encounter this festive feeling that this is our joint fight. This is our joint struggle. We are struggling with the Palestinian people because today it's their children, tomorrow it's our children. We are back to the universal value, we are back to humanity, and we are back to the idea that injustice anywhere is injustice everywhere. And that's Martin Luther King for you. And what Nelson Mandela himself said, he said the freedom of South Africa is incomplete without the freedom of Palestine. That's universality for you. That's exactly where the people of the world are. That what happens in Rafah, where I was born, connects directly to Cardiff. And that, Cardiff cares and absolutely into that cause because it has to do with our shared humanity. So this is the hope. And I'll tell you, that hope is growing and growing and growing. Change is happening in the US. Change is happening everywhere. But let's go back to London. What I see in London for the last couple of years reminds me of the anti-apartheid movement 100%. And it reminds me how that anti-apartheid movement ended up collapsing the apartheid regime in Africa, surrounding it and separating it from the rest of the world, and in the end, suffocating it.
So that's really interesting, because I wanted to come to that. I mean, do you think that kind of pressure, which means economic sanctions, is also the next step?
100%. And this is not just with regards to Palestine and the illegalities in Palestine. It's with regards to anywhere in the world. Of course, it was used against in the situation with Ukraine against Russia. It is used everywhere. The Balkans. The issue is when it comes to Israel. When it comes to Israel, the West always poses like this is the exception to every rule. Why it's the exception to every rule? So we need to change that. We need to change. We don't change the rules or the policy asks. No, we need sanctions. We definitely need the arms embargo, but we need to change and challenge this Israeli exceptionalism. No. Israel must be just like any other state actor in the world and must be treated equally. But I'll go back to the idea of the anti-apartheid movement because that's the candle I was talking about. That's the hope I was talking about. I'll tell you, what I see here is as intense, if not more. And I'd like to remind you and remind your viewers, the last comers of the anti-apartheid movement were two countries, Israel and the US. And today, the last in the globe is Israel and the US. Don't you see the similarity here? Don't you see the power of the people? Don't you see that we are upon that moment? Don't you think this is our South Africa moment? And that anti-apartheid movement was able to free Nelson Mandela and was able to free South Africa. And I think we are almost there. Absolutely. But I want our people to know, because our people are being deprived of you. You are unable to go and convey that message as a media. You are unable to go and report what is happening to them in Gaza and many parts of the West Bank, by the way. Israel now is absolutely wanting to do all this in the darkness. So we are hoping through these conversations, and we are conveying to our people, and the ceremony we conveyed here, raising the flag, commemorating the UK recognition, telling our people here, because of your blood, because of your sacrifice, because of the last 100 years of steadfastness, sumud in Arabic, now the UK has ended 100 years of denying our existence and denying our right to self-determination. So that is the hope. The hope is that while we are being killed in the worst moment of our history, a genocide is being done against us, lights are coming from many directions.
And how do you see your own role in this future? Some people wonder if you are part of the future of a Palestinian state, a possible leader. Is that how you see your own future?
My future? I'm just a person, my friend. This is much, much bigger than me as a person, as a boy from the refugee.
That's a political answer.
No, it's not. No, it's not. Listen, the honor of my life really is to represent the Palestinian people as an ambassador, first in the US and then now in the UK. The honor of my life is to stand there 2 days ago and declare that today, Britain's denial of the Palestinian people, Britain's most gravest historic injustice of denying our right to self-determination has ended. Big deal. Doesn't matter where you are in that state, and that what matters is you are a son of that nation and you serve that nation wherever you are. And I'll tell you, I felt that was the most important moment in a long history. And for a boy from the refugee camp, again, to have witnessed that, I feel I'm done. I'm done. Maybe I'll become, you and I will do a joint podcast. You and I will do a joint podcast. But now there is no liberated, there is no free state of Palestine. Maybe once the state of Palestine is free, you and I will think about how do we do that. In the meantime, the real battle is the liberation.
Yeah, I mean, look, this podcast is partly about allowing people to dream, and you've been kind of laying out a vision of hope. But there is a much less hopeful possibility as well, as you know, which is that the Trump administration is not going anywhere, whether it's him or somebody else. You are essentially down a line this way. Israel has worked out that it can pretty much do what it wants and carry on. The likely successors to Netanyahu from the opposition essentially think the same thing as he does when it comes to a Palestinian state. So there's no visionary leader in Israel who's saying let's go for peace and a two-state solution, who's likely to be elected. And this just carries on. And that in truth is quite a realistic scenario, isn't it?
It is. If we don't really deliver to the Israeli public, in the end, it's the Israeli people who elect their leaders. And they elected Netanyahu almost for 20 years, by the way, because the first time they elected Netanyahu, it was 1996. So it's almost 20 years. They elected him on the basis that he will derail the Oslo process. He promised them publicly in his election campaign, and he will never, ever allow for a Palestinian state. And he will do that while he will normalize Israel's relations with the region. Remember the normalization campaign. And that occupation he promised them will be permanent, colonization permanent, besieging Gaza permanent, everything will be permanent. Permanent illegality, and things will be fine. I am the man, he told them, who can deal with America. I'm the man who can deal with the region. We need to give them a different message. And we need to tell them, you cannot have the cake and eat it too. And things come with consequences. If you continue electing this person, there is a price to be paid. And the price has got to be economic. And the price has got to be cultural. And the price has got to be completely painful situation whereby you cannot believe that you can continue subjugating an entire nation permanently. And we can do that. Again, to South Africa example. The people of the world are doing that already. The governments of the world have just begun to do that. As I was walking here, Slovenia announced that Benjamin Netanyahu is persona non grata in Slovenia, and he cannot travel ban. I think I mentioned this earlier. This is going to increase. And Slovenia is a European country. This is going to increase, and it will be so the people's movement is reaching governments now. And if we get to a point where we have full sanctions, not half sanctions, there is a lot of these measures that were taken by some countries, including the UK, like the arms embargo, like the sanctions on the Israeli government, like the sanctions on the settlers and the settlements. All of them are half measures. We want full measures. Apply the full force of the law. And I assure you, people, including the Israeli people, will sit, pause, think again, and realize, no. This cannot continue. We have got to bring about leaders that take us into a different direction. Netanyahu was a clown. They will realize Netanyahu did not serve the future of Israel. Netanyahu has isolated Israel completely and has achieved nothing except murdering 20,000 children, and together with more than 45,000 of their parents and families. That is not an achievement for a military or for a country. That's nothing. Destroying building is not an achievement. Achievement is to provide better future to your people and the people around you.
And can you say that if the world and Israel accept the idea of accountability, that will also apply to whoever is left who was responsible for October 7th or any other atrocities? And that the Palestinians want accountability in international courts for Palestinian criminals and war criminals?
Yeah, you asked me this question long ago, and I remember it, and I told you, of course, you cannot be half committed or half demanding or half pregnant. You have to be, if you believe in something, you do it all the way. We believe and will adhere to international judicial system.
Husam Zomlot, thank you very much indeed.
Most welcome.
Thank you for sharing your ways to change the world. You can watch all of these interviews on the Channel 4 News YouTube channel. Until next time, bye-bye.